Far away, beyond the village of Nakuru, there were old stories about a cave in the forest. They said a powerful serpent lived inside, waiting for someone to come and make a wish. But no one who entered the cave ever came back the same. Some didn't come back at all. Zawadi, a young farmer, had heard these stories since he was a child. His farm was failing, and his family was hungry. He had nothing left to lose. One day, he decided to find the cave, believing that the serpent's magic could change his life. He had no idea that what he was about to wish for would cost him more than he ever imagined. Zawadi walked through the forest, his body tired and his mind full of hope. After days of searching, he found the cave. It was dark and quiet inside. But when Zawadi stepped closer, a soft light filled the air. At the end of the cave was a large mirror. In the mirror, Zawadi saw a giant serpent, its eyes glowing and full of power. The serpent spoke, its voice like a deep rumble. You have come to ask for a wish. But be careful. Every wish you make will come with a price. Zawadi felt fear, but his need was greater. I wish for food, enough to feed my family. The serpent's eyes gleamed. Your wish is granted, but remember, not all wishes bring happiness. Zawadi didn't understand, but before he could ask more, he was suddenly outside the cave, staring at his farm. The next morning, Zawadi woke up to a strange sight. His farm was full of crops, more than he had ever imagined. Corn, beans, fruits, and vegetables covered the land. There was more food than he could possibly eat or store. At first, Zawadi was happy. He thought his wish had come true. But as the day went on, he realized something was wrong. The crops kept growing and growing. They covered his land, his house, and even the roads leading to the village. Soon, the villagers began to notice. They came to see Zawadi's land, but instead of being happy for him, they were afraid. What is this, Zawadi? This is too much, they said. Zawadi began to feel afraid too. The food he had wished for wasn't bringing him peace. It was taking over everything. Zawadi spent days trying to control the crops, but no matter how much he worked, the food kept multiplying. It was impossible to stop. One day, he returned to the cave, hoping the serpent could help. But when he arrived, the serpent was already waiting for him. You have chosen food as your first wish, the serpent said. But remember, greed has its own price. Zawadi's heart sank. I didn't want this. I just wanted to feed my family. The serpent's eyes burned with an eerie glow. You have too much now. The price of your wish has begun. Zawadi felt the weight of the serpent's words. He had asked for too much, and now it was ruining everything. But he still had 2 wishes left. He needed to fix this somehow. Days passed, and Zawadi's farm was still covered in food. He tried to sell some, but it was no use. It seemed the more he tried to control the land, the more things went out of control. One night, feeling desperate, he returned to the cave again. I wish for wealth, he said. Enough money to fix everything and live a life of peace. The serpent's voice echoed in the cave. Your wish will be granted. But be careful, wealth will bring you more than you expect. The next day, Zawadi woke to find his farm had changed. He no longer had just crops, he had gold, silver, and treasure scattered across the land. His house was now a grand mansion, and he had everything he had ever dreamed of. But as the days went on, Zawadi realized something was wrong. The villagers who had once respected him now avoided him. They didn't trust him anymore. They were afraid of his sudden wealth. Zawadi sat alone, surrounded by riches, feeling emptier than ever. Zawadi spent many nights thinking about his wishes. He had wanted food, wealth, and peace, but all he had found was loneliness. The more he had, the more he lost. His wealth had pushed the villagers away, and his land had become a prison. One day, he returned to the cave, hoping the serpent could help him. Please, he begged, I don't want to be alone anymore. I just want peace. The serpent's voice echoed, you still have 1 wish left, Zawadi. Choose wisely. Zawadi thought for a long time. I wish to be respected by all the villagers. I want them to trust me again. The serpent's eyes gleamed, and the air grew heavy. Your wish is granted. But remember, respect can be more dangerous than gold. Zawadi thought his wish had finally brought him what he wanted, respect. The villagers began to return, but instead of admiration, they now looked at him with a mixture of fear and confusion. They bowed to him, but their eyes spoke of distrust. Zawadi had the respect he'd longed for, but it came at a terrible cost. As days passed, Zawadi's power grew. He felt it deep within his chest, this strange, burning sensation whenever someone looked at him. The villagers no longer saw him as a friend but as a man with a dangerous force. His once peaceful life was now filled with whispers and fearful glances. One morning, a young boy named Jomo came to him, his face pale with fear. Zawadi, he said in a shaky voice, they say the magic that made you powerful is starting to spread. The crops, the animals, nothing is normal anymore. Zawadi looked around. The crops were still multiplying, but not in the way they had before. They now grew in strange shapes, twisting, turning into unnatural forms. The sky above his land had turned dark and stormy, and the ground beneath his feet felt like it was alive, shifting with every step he took. The serpent's voice echoed in Zawadi's mind, you wanted power, Zawadi. Now you must live with the consequences. Zawadi couldn't understand what was happening. His land had become a strange, dark version of itself. Trees with twisting branches loomed over him, and the air felt thick, heavy with something unnatural. The villagers, who had once come to him for help, now stayed away. No one wanted to be near him anymore. The once clear sky now had flashes of lightning, and the earth seemed to shake whenever he moved. Zawadi felt trapped, unable to escape the curse he had brought upon himself. That night, as Zawadi sat alone, thinking about how to fix everything, a shadow moved across his mansion. He turned to see a figure in the doorway. It was Mama Juma, an old woman from the village who had always been kind to him. Zawadi, she said softly, her voice full of sadness, I have seen the magic take hold of you. It is worse than I feared. This curse will not let you go. You must go back to the cave and make things right. Zawadi looked at her, panic rising in his chest. But I don't understand. The serpent granted my wishes. What do I do now? Mama Juma's eyes were filled with knowing. The serpent grants no gift without a price. You will have to face the truth of your wishes, Zawadi. You are not free. Zawadi knew what he had to do. He couldn't let the curse continue, not when it was tearing apart everything he had once known. He set out once again for the cave, his mind full of fear and regret. But he had no choice. His family was at risk, and the land was falling apart. When he reached the cave, the serpent was waiting for him. It wasn't the same as before. Now, its form was dark and twisted, its eyes glowing like fire, and its voice echoed with a deep, unsettling power. You return, the serpent said, its voice like a distant thunderstorm. You thought you could change your fate, Zawadi. But your wishes have made you part of this land. You cannot undo what has been done. Zawadi fell to his knees, desperation filling his heart. Please, I just want peace. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want this curse anymore. The serpent's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Zawadi saw something strange in its gaze, a hint of pity. Your third wish is all that remains. But be careful. What you ask for will be your last. Zawadi took a deep breath. I wish for everything to return to normal. I wish for the curse to be broken. The serpent grinned. Your wish will be granted. But be warned, Zawadi. Sometimes, a wish is not as simple as it seems. Zawadi felt the ground beneath him tremble. He closed his eyes, hoping for peace, hoping that the curse would finally lift. But when he opened them again, the world around him had changed in ways he could never have imagined. The land was no longer his own. The crops, once endless and twisted, were now replaced by towering, black trees with sharp, gleaming leaves. His mansion was gone, replaced by a dark, ancient temple. The sky was no longer stormy, it was dark, with swirling clouds that never parted. Zawadi turned to the serpent, who was now more menacing than ever. "What have you done?" Zawadi shouted. "This isn't what I wanted." The serpent's eyes burned with cold amusement. "You asked for everything to return to normal. But the normal you seek is not the one you remember. You will never return to the life you had. The price of your wishes is this new world. This land is now bound to you, Zawadi. And you will never be free." Zawadi looked around in horror. The village he had once known was now empty, the people nowhere to be found. He was alone, surrounded by this dark, twisted version of the world. Zawadi realized that no matter what he wished for, the cycle would never end. The serpent had bound him to this cursed world, and every choice he made would only lead to more misery. There was no escape. Days turned into weeks, and Zawadi wandered through the darkened land, looking for answers, searching for the village, but it was gone. Everything was gone. The people he had once known, the life he had once had, it was all lost. As the sun set one evening, Zawadi sat by the temple, his mind filled with regret and sorrow. He could feel the serpent's presence watching him, always there, waiting for his next mistake. And then, just as he thought it might be over, the serpent appeared before him, its voice as cold as ever. "You have learned nothing, Zawadi. This world is yours now. The price of your wishes is eternal. The curse will never lift, and the cycle will repeat again and again." Zawadi looked up at the serpent, his eyes filled with hopelessness. He had sought peace, wealth, and respect, but all he had gained was a never-ending curse. The serpent's laugh echoed in the air, a sound that would haunt him forever. Zawadi couldn't escape the feeling that the land itself was watching him. The air was heavy with the serpent's presence, as if it was everywhere and nowhere at once. The world had changed, and no matter where Zawadi turned, he couldn't find anything familiar. The land was filled with shadows, twisted trees, and an eerie silence. His once bustling village had become a memory, lost to the curse he had brought upon himself. The serpent's voice echoed again, sending chills down Zawadi's spine. "You still seek peace, Zawadi. You are trapped in a world of your own making. Your desires have bound you to this place. You cannot wish your way out." Zawadi felt his chest tighten with frustration. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, his voice full of anger and regret. The serpent's glowing eyes locked onto him. "I want you to understand. You are the master of your fate, but you must learn the consequences of your choices. Your wishes have left a mark on this world. Now you will face the greatest challenge." Suddenly, the ground beneath Zawadi cracked open. A dark fog rolled out from the cracks, and strange shapes began to emerge from the mist. Figures, twisted and broken, appeared before him, villagers he had once known, but now they were hollow, empty shadows of their former selves. "This is your doing, Zawadi," one of the figures whispered. "You took everything from us." Zawadi's heart sank. "I never wanted this. I wanted peace. I wanted to help my family." The figure's face twisted in sorrow. "You wanted power, wealth, and respect. But the price of those desires is more than you can ever pay." As Zawadi tried to back away from the figures, the serpent's voice filled his ears. "Now you will face the trial of choices. You must choose, will you remain here, in this world of darkness, or will you return to the life you once had, but at a cost?" Zawadi stood frozen, his mind racing. He couldn't bear to stay in this cursed world, surrounded by shadows and the people he had failed. But he also knew that returning to his old life would mean giving up everything he had gained and facing the full weight of his mistakes. The serpent appeared before him, its eyes glowing with dark power. "You must make your decision now, Zawadi. Time is running out." Zawadi looked around, torn. His heart screamed for him to go back, to fix everything, to restore the peace he had lost. But a voice deep inside him warned that his choice could destroy everything he had worked for, or worse, make it all permanent. He swallowed hard and spoke, his voice trembling. "I want to return to my old life. I want to fix what I've done." The serpent's laugh echoed through the land, dark and mocking. "So be it, Zawadi. But remember, every wish comes with a price. You may think you are fixing your world, but you will only create new chaos. The ground trembled as Zawadi was pulled back into the darkness, his vision spinning. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself back in the village, back to the time before his first wish. The fields were still barren, and the villagers walked the same paths they always had. Everything was as it was before he found the cave. Zawadi breathed a sigh of relief. He had done it. He had returned to the past. But as he looked around, something felt wrong. The villagers stared at him strangely, as if they knew something was different. They whispered among themselves, and Zawadi could feel their eyes on him. They no longer trusted him, not because of his wealth or his magic, but because they could sense that something about him had changed. He approached one of the villagers, an old friend named Toji, and tried to explain. Toji, I'm sorry for what happened. I've learned my lesson. I want to make things right. Toji's face was full of suspicion. Zawadi, you've been to the cave, haven't you? Zawadi froze. What do you mean? Toji shook his head. I've seen the signs. No one who enters that cave ever comes back the same. You've brought something back with you, haven't you? Zawadi's heart pounded. How did Toji know? The serpent's curse had followed him, even into the past. There was no escape from the consequences of his wishes. The ground suddenly trembled again, and the sky above grew dark. A low hiss echoed in the air as the serpent's voice filled Zawadi's mind. So you think you have returned to the past, Zawadi? But the past you seek is not the one you remember. The price you paid is eternal. You are bound to this land, to this curse, forever. The villagers screamed as the earth began to split open, sending dark shadows rising from the cracks. The serpent's massive form appeared above them, its eyes burning with fire. You cannot undo what has been done, the serpent continued. You have tried to escape your fate, but now you must face the truth. Your wishes were never about peace. They were about control, about taking more than you could ever handle. And now, the land itself will punish you. Zawadi looked around, his mind filled with horror. The world was shifting once again, and the darkness was closing in on him. No matter how hard he tried to escape, he couldn't outrun the curse he had invited. As the serpent raised its head high, Zawadi knew that the world he had once known was gone. There was no way back, no way to undo the damage he had caused. The cycle was endless, and the price of his wishes would haunt him forever. Zawadi's heart raced as the serpent's massive form loomed above him, its fiery eyes burning through the darkness. The ground shook beneath his feet, and the air crackled with magic, heavier than ever before. It felt like the very earth was alive, angry, and ready to swallow him whole. The villagers had scattered, screaming in fear. Zawadi stood frozen in the middle of the chaos, unsure of what to do. The serpent's voice echoed in his mind, sending a chill through his body. You have tried to escape, Zawadi, but there is no escaping your fate. The past, present, and future are all tied to the choices you made. You are not in control anymore. The serpent's tail swished through the air, and with a flick, it sent a shockwave across the land. Zawadi fell to the ground as the land split apart, creating deep fissures. Dark, shadowy figures began to rise from the cracks in the earth, twisted shapes that seemed to watch Zawadi with cold, empty eyes. They were the spirits of the village, or at least their cursed shadows. Zawadi tried to stand, but the weight of everything, his mistakes, his wishes, his regret, crushed him. The land had been twisted beyond repair, and he realized with growing horror that it was because of him. Is this what you wanted? The serpent asked, its voice a low, mocking hiss. Power, wealth, respect, all of it is now part of this cursed land. And you will never leave. Zawadi's knees buckled as he collapsed to the ground. Please, he whispered. I don't want this anymore. I just wanted peace. I just wanted to help my family. The serpent's gaze softened, but only for a moment. The peace you seek was never meant to be yours, Zawadi. You wanted control, and now you must live with the consequences. As the dark shadows grew stronger, Zawadi realized the full weight of the serpent's words. His wish for wealth had not only destroyed his life, it had caused the land itself to break apart, distorting everything around him. His need for respect had driven the villagers away, leaving him to face this curse alone. The curse wasn't just on him, it had become part of the land, part of everyone he had once known. The serpent's laugh echoed in the air as the shadowy figures of the villagers circled around him. They reached out with their ghostly hands, their faces twisted with sorrow and anger. Zawadi could hear their whispers, full of pain and betrayal. "You took from us," one voice hissed. "You took more than you could handle." Zawadi's heart shattered as the faces of his family flashed before his eyes, his mother, his father, his sister. All of them had suffered because of his selfish wishes. They were the ones who had warned him, the ones who had tried to keep him grounded. But Zawadi had ignored them. Now, they were lost forever, trapped in this cursed world of his making. "I never meant for this," Zawadi whispered, his voice full of despair. "I didn't want to destroy everything. Please, let me fix it. I would do anything." The serpent's eyes glowed brighter. "You cannot undo what has been done, Zawadi. The price of your wishes is far greater than you realize. You wanted peace, but peace comes at a cost. And now, you will pay the price." Suddenly, a burst of light exploded from the ground, pushing back the shadows. Zawadi gasped, his body trembling. The air around him shifted, and a strange calm filled the space. He looked up to see a figure emerging from the light, a figure he thought he had lost forever. It was Amina, the woman he had once loved. She stood before him, her eyes full of sadness, but also a strange, powerful calm. "You are not alone, Zawadi," Amina said softly, her voice like a breeze through the trees. "I see what you have done, and I see the pain in your heart. But you must understand, this word, this curse, is not only because of your wishes. It is because of the choices you made. And only you can change them." Zawadi's heart pounded in his chest. "Amina, please. I've lost everything. What can I do to fix this? What can I do to make it right?" Amina stepped closer, her hand reaching out to him. "There is still a chance, Zawadi. You can make one final wish. But it will not be easy. It will require a sacrifice, a choice you must make with your heart. If you wish to break the curse, you must choose what you are willing to lose." Zawadi looked at her, confusion and fear mixing in his eyes. "I don't understand. What must I lose?" Amina's eyes held a deep sorrow. "You will have to choose between your own happiness and the happiness of the people you love. To undo the curse, to restore the balance, you will need to sacrifice what is most precious to you." Zawadi stared at her, the weight of her words sinking deep into his soul. The serpent's voice echoed again, cold and mocking. "Choose wisely, Zawadi. Your final wish will shape the future, and it will come at a price greater than all the others." Zawadi's mind raced. The serpent had given him one last chance, one final wish. He could ask for peace, for the curse to be broken, but the cost would be high. He thought of his family, his village, and Amina. The world around him had been shaped by his selfish desires, and now, he had a chance to make it right. But he knew that whatever he wished for, something precious would be lost. He turned to Amina, his heart filled with pain. "I want to undo everything. I want the land to be whole again. I want the villagers to be free from this curse." Amina nodded, her expression softening. "And what are you willing to lose, Zawadi?" Zawadi took a deep breath. He knew what the answer was, even though it tore at his heart. "I will give up everything, the wealth, the power, the respect. I will live a simple life. I will sacrifice myself so that the curse is lifted from this land." The serpent's eyes glowed brighter, and the shadows around him seemed to shrink back. "So be it." Zawadi closed his eyes, the weight of his decision sinking into his bones. He had chosen to give up everything, for peace, for the land, and for the people he had once failed. Zawadi stood there, his eyes closed, as the serpent's magic swirled around him. He could feel the weight of his decision pressing down on him, the weight of everything he had given up. His mind raced as the world around him seemed to shift. For a moment, everything was still. The ground beneath him was quiet, and the shadowy figures of the villagers faded into the background. The air around Zawadi grew thick with anticipation. Then, the serpent's voice, deeper than ever, filled his mind. So, Zawadi, you have chosen. You would give up everything, your wealth, your power, your respect, for peace. But do you truly understand what you have chosen? Zawadi opened his eyes, feeling his heart beat louder in his chest. I understand, he whispered. I just want things to be right again. I want to make it up to the people I've hurt. The serpent's glowing eyes glinted as it wrapped its tail around him, pulling him closer. Very well. But understand this, your sacrifice is not as simple as you believe. You will never be the same, Zawadi. The world you knew will change, and you will change with it. Before Zawadi could respond, the serpent's magic swept through him like a storm. He felt his body being pulled apart and reformed, his mind racing with visions of his past mistakes and choices. It was as if every part of him was being torn away, only to be replaced with something new. When the magic finally stopped, Zawadi found himself standing alone in a strange new world. The village was gone, his farm, his mansion, the endless crops, all vanished. He stood in the middle of a vast, empty field. The air was different, clearer, fresher. There was no sign of the cursed land that had once surrounded him. The serpent's voice echoed one last time, cold and distant. You are free, Zawadi. The curse is broken. But you must remember, peace comes at a cost. You have given up everything to restore balance, and now you must live with the consequences. Zawadi's heart pounded in his chest. He looked around, hoping to find something familiar, but there was nothing. It was as if his past had been erased, wiped clean from existence. His family, his friends, the villagers, they were all gone, lost to the choices he had made. He sank to his knees, overwhelmed with grief. Had it been worth it? Had the sacrifice truly fixed everything, or had he simply destroyed the life he once knew? As Zawadi sat in the middle of the empty field, his mind clouded with doubt, he heard a voice, a familiar voice, but one he hadn't heard in what felt like forever. Zawadi. He looked up in shock to see Amina standing before him. But she was different. Her eyes no longer held the same sadness. They were filled with something darker, something cold. Amina. Zawadi's voice was barely a whisper. She smiled, but it wasn't the smile he remembered. It was a twisted, knowing grin. Yes, Zawadi. I have returned, as promised. You wished for peace, but you forgot that peace is never free. You may have broken the curse, but now you must face the true cost of your wishes. Zawadi's heart sank. What do you mean? I've given up everything. What more could there be? Amina's eyes glinted. You see, Zawadi, your sacrifice was not enough. The curse cannot be broken without a greater price. You may have freed the land, but you have bound yourself to a new fate, a fate worse than what you left behind. Suddenly, the ground beneath Zawadi began to tremble, and dark figures began to rise from the earth, shadows, memories of the villagers who had once walked the land, now twisted and distorted. They circled around Zawadi, their hollow eyes filled with anger. You took everything from us, one of the shadows hissed. And now we take from you. Zawadi stepped back in fear. No. I didn't mean for this to happen. I wanted to make things right. I wanted to fix it. Amina shook her head slowly. You can't fix what has been broken. You've played with forces far greater than you understand. And now, you must pay the price for your choices. Zawadi's heart raced as the shadows closed in on him. They were everywhere, their forms shifting and changing, their whispers filling the air with pain and fury. It felt as if the very earth was closing in around him, trapping him in a never-ending nightmare. The serpent's voice returned, deep and cold. You thought you could escape, Zawadi. But there is no escape from the choices you have made. The land, the curse, the people, they are all part of you now. Zawadi fell to his knees, his chest heavy with regret. Please. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt anyone. The serpent's laughter echoed around him. It is too late for apologies. But you are not without a choice. The final test awaits you. To free yourself from this nightmare, you must give up something even more precious than your past. The final price of your wishes is this: you must let go of your very soul. Zawadi's breath caught in his throat. What do you mean? The serpent's eyes glowed brighter. The price of peace is your soul. Your desire for a better life, for control, has created a new curse. And to undo it, you must give up everything that makes you, you. Zawadi felt his body grow colder, his mind racing. He was torn. To be free from this endless torment, he would have to sacrifice his very essence, the part of him that made him human. Zawadi stood there, torn between two impossible choices. The shadows surrounded him, the serpent's voice echoing in his ears, and Amina's cold smile watching him from the edge of the darkness. Everything he had done, all the sacrifices he had made, had led to this moment. He could give up his soul, end the torment, and live in peace forever. But at what cost? What kind of peace could there be without his essence? Without his very being? The serpent's voice cut through his thoughts, cold and final. Choose, Zawadi. The price must be paid. Zawadi closed his eyes, his heart heavy with the weight of his choices. The shadows closed in on him, their whispers growing louder, but he knew he could never escape the consequences of his actions. He had to make the hardest choice of all, to lose himself for the sake of peace, or to keep fighting, knowing he would never be free from the consequences of his wishes. Zawadi stood at the heart of the swirling shadows, feeling the weight of his decisions pressing down on him like 1,000 stones. His mind raced. Could he really give up his soul? Could he truly sacrifice everything that made him who he was? The serpent's cold eyes never left him, and Amina's face, once a symbol of love and hope, now appeared only as a reminder of everything he had lost. Choose, Zawadi, the serpent's voice echoed through the darkness. Your soul or your peace. One must be sacrificed. Zawadi's chest tightened. He thought of his family, his village, the people he had wronged. Could he live with the consequences of his selfishness, knowing he had destroyed their lives? The land itself had twisted into a nightmare because of him. Could he ever make up for the harm he'd caused? Peace, Zawadi whispered. I want peace. But not at the cost of my soul. Not at the cost of everything I've worked for. Amina's eyes darkened, and the shadows seemed to press in closer. You are wrong, Zawadi. You still do not understand. Peace cannot be earned without sacrifice. And now, you must make the ultimate choice. The serpent's voice grew louder, its presence consuming. You want to go back, Zawadi? To undo your actions? There is no going back. The price has already been paid. But there is one way to truly fix this, one final test. Suddenly, the world around Zawadi shifted. The ground began to ripple, the air crackling with power. The shadows of the villagers, now fully formed, closed in around him, their faces twisted with anger and pain. But then, the ground beneath Zawadi's feet opened wide. A deep chasm appeared, leading into darkness. The shadows reached out to pull him into the abyss, but Zawadi stood his ground, his heart pounding in his chest. Zawadi, the serpent's voice came again, but this time, it was different, gentler. The true cost of peace is not what you expected. You must let go of everything you know and face the void. Only then will the curse be broken. The serpent's form loomed above him, its glowing eyes locking onto Zawadi's. I offer you one final choice. You may enter this abyss and lose everything, the land, your memories, your identity, but in return, the curse will be broken, and peace will be restored. Or you may walk away, keeping your soul, your memories, your life, but the curse will remain, and the land will forever be trapped in darkness. Zawadi's body trembled as he looked at the chasm. It was terrifying, endless, dark, and cold. But deep down, he knew that to restore balance, to set things right, he might have to let go of the very essence of who he was. Zawadi stood at the edge of the abyss, his heart torn. The decision was impossible. If he chose the abyss, he would lose himself forever. His soul, his memories, his life would vanish. But if he didn't, the curse would never be lifted. The land would remain twisted, and the people he loved would continue to suffer. I cannot, Zawadi whispered to himself. His voice broke with the weight of the decision. I can't lose everything I've known. Amina stepped forward, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of sorrow and understanding. Zawadi, the choice was always yours to make. You sought peace, but you forgot that peace does not come without sacrifice. To heal the land, you must first heal yourself. Can you face the darkness? Can you face the unknown? Zawadi turned to her, his voice trembling. What will I be without my memories? Without my soul? Amina's voice softened. The choice is yours, Zawadi. You have given everything for the sake of others. Now, it's time to give up what's left for the greater good. Zawadi took one last look at the world he had known, his family, his village, the cursed land that had been his responsibility. He closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down his cheek. I do it, he said quietly, stepping toward the chasm. I let go. I give up everything. Zawadi took a deep breath and stepped into the chasm. The moment his feet touched the dark void, he felt the pull, his body seemed to disintegrate into nothingness. His thoughts, his memories, his very essence, all of it was drawn into the darkness. For a moment, he felt like he was being torn apart, as if his entire life was unraveling before him. But then, everything went still. There was no pain, no fear. Only peace. Zawadi's vision slowly returned, and when he opened his eyes, he found himself standing in a world of pure light. There was no darkness, no shadows, no fear. Only a soft, comforting glow surrounded him. It felt as though he had returned to a time before time itself. He wasn't sure where he was, but he felt a strange calm wash over him. It was as if the very fabric of the world had shifted, and everything had been set right. The serpent's voice echoed one last time, softer than before. You have made your choice, Zawadi. The curse is lifted. Peace is restored. When Zawadi opened his eyes again, he found himself standing in the center of the village. The air was fresh, the sun shining down on the land. The crops were thriving, the animals healthy, and the villagers were gathering in the center of the village as they had once done. They smiled and laughed, unaware of the darkness that had once plagued their land. Zawadi stood there, a strange sense of peace filling his heart. He had given up everything, his past, his soul, his memories, but in return, he had saved the village, restored the land, and lifted the curse that had held them all captive. He walked into the village, feeling a sense of calm and acceptance he had never known. The people saw him and smiled, but Zawadi knew that they did not recognize him. He was a stranger to them now, but that was okay. He had done what was needed. He had found peace.